Hello, Grandmasters. Mike from the WCA. How are you? I want to give you the week one update. This is the video for the 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock students. And what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to show you little snippets or little parts of positions and games that came from your work. 4 games in particular. I'm going to mention the first names of the players and take you to positions that they played, and then change a couple of things here and there where I think it might be instructive. At the end in the blog post, I'm going to list some questions that you should be able to answer when you come back to class on Sunday, okay? First, let's look at a game between Charlie and Eric, who are both new students. I'll put the opening moves on the board as I speak. And these guys began with the basic Italian game setup, which is this position here. Very common move order played, both players developing the minor pieces, castle, and it turns into a symmetrical position. And I was pleased, by the way, to see these guys playing this way, even though it is kind of like a copycat situation. I'm happy in that I didn't know what to expect. During the lecture, they both answered a lot of questions, which made me happy, but I wasn't really sure that they could play as well as they did. But here, I mean, you know, all the minor pieces are coming out, the kings are castled. But it's in this position I want to point out the first piece of instruction. Whenever there is a copycat position on the board, it usually favors white. Do you know why? At any point you can pause your video and answer the questions and try to figure something out before I go forward. The reason it favors white is they're going to be the first one to break the symmetry. You know, if white puts black in check, black can't answer by putting white in check. It doesn't work that way. So here, Charlie had a chance to put a little bit more pressure on this knight that is pinned. You see how I'm kind of toggling that bishop around? So whenever you have a pin like that, moves like knight to d5 put a lot of pressure on black, because once you take on this square, they're going to have to take back with their pawn, which would open up the king. And of course, black can do it to white as well. As a matter of fact, it almost happened in the game. So let me show you what happened instead of knight to d5. So we have this position. Here, Charlie decides to take the knight on f6, which invites the queen to take back, putting more pressure on this square here. It's at this point white can still get a pretty good game by hopping their knight into the center, and that hits two things. It hits the c-pawn and the queen, so Eric may have been forced to go back. Okay, so can you guys, make sure you can follow this, because these things happen over and over in these games. So let's go back after the queen took. Instead of doing what I showed you, Charlie played an interesting move. He played pawn to a3. And when he plays pawn to a3, I want to highlight the same exact pin that was on the other side of the board, but it's in reverse. This time it's Eric doing it to Charlie. Can you guys figure out a way to put more pressure on that knight? Well, I hope you found the move knight to d4. And by doing that, you're really putting pressure on this piece, and there's no way that white can stop you from opening up the king. You can try certain things. For example, you might play, I don't know, maybe you can play h3, which is a little risky, because when the knight takes over here and you take back, you're going to lose the game. You're actually in a lot of trouble. Can you see why? Again, pause the video at any time. What can black do here that's really, really strong? Well, it's bishop takes pawn on f3, and that creates two threats. It creates the threat of obviously taking Big Mama. Yeah, get used to that. I call the queen Big Mama. That's number one. And number two, there's a really strong queen check, either here or here. And after that check is played, the queen is going to swoop down to g2, and there's going to be a checkmate. Okay, so what to do? I've had this position on the board before with other students, and that's why I picked it out from Charlie and Eric. This is not what happened in their game, but it easily could have. I've had kids in this position play knight e2. And what they do with that move is, one, they stop the bishop from taking the queen, and two, they think later they can use the knight to cover up any check on this line. But that's not going to work, because after queen g5 check, you're getting mated anyway. If you move your king, this is the only legal move for the king, you're going to get mated, right? Let's go back. If you don't move the king, the only other way to get out of check is to block with the knight. And the reason they play this way, they say to themselves, okay, I'm going to give up my queen for the bishop, but at least I'm not getting checkmated. But there is a bit of a problem here. You're getting checkmated anyway in one move. Can you find it? Yeah, I've had some kids have trouble with this. One move checkmate for black. Pause your video. Did you find queen takes knight? Yeah, game is over. Ouchie. Can the pawn take the queen? No way. Can't do it. See why? There's another pin. See that here? The pawn is pinned. That pattern happens so many times in chess. Let me go back and show it to you one more time. After queen took on f6, if the knight had hopped in, you would have put a lot of pressure on this knight. If you're playing white, don't play moves like pawn h3. You're going to get in a whole lot of trouble because they're going to remove the knight with a check. And keep in mind, you're in check, so if you don't take the knight, you're going to have to move the king. You're going to lose that piece for free. If you do take the knight, you're going to get hit with this very strong bishop move and get checkmated. Okay? I want to move on. I want to show you a game between Kenan and Josh. This was a queen pawn opening. Okay, and remember, I'm going to ask a couple of questions in the blog that you may be able to, or hopefully be able to pick up from this video. After d4, d5, Kenan played what's known as the Queen's Gambit, and you want to start learning the names of some of these basic openings. The Queen's Gambit is when white pushes a pawn on the queen side of the board, and it looks like they're offering black a free pawn. Well, it's not really free, because if you take it, I can get it back right away by giving you this check. See the check? And at the same time, I'm hitting your pawn. I could also ignore the pawn and just put another pawn in the center and tell you, hey, look, you know, I'll let you take a pawn temporarily, but my pieces are going to come out pretty quickly. So what normally happens is after c4, black tells white, hey, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm going to decline your offer and say no and put a pawn at either e6 or c6. And the idea behind these moves is if white ever decides to take, black can replace his center pawn with another pawn and guard the middle. What Josh did after c4 is he played a rare move. He played knight f6. And knight f6 in a Queen's Gambit is a little bit tricky. Let me show you why. If I take your pawn and you decide to take it back, I'm going to gain a little bit of time on you no matter how you do it. So if you take back this way with the knight, I'm going to gain time by playing e4, and that's going to chase your knight away. If you go back, then I may, I don't know, put my knight on c3 to guard my pawn, and this is pretty pleasant for white. White has these two pawns in the middle. They're guarding so many nice squares, and if you don't know how to deal with this as black, you can really get squished. Okay, let's go back. After I take your pawn here, what else can you do? Well, you can take it with your queen. If you do that, I'm going to play knight c3, and I'm going to knock your queen away. So once you move your queen, I'm kind of making this up. Let's say you go to, I don't know, d6. I kind of got to play my knight move for free because I brought a knight out and you had to move the same piece twice. So you lost a little bit of time. Let me show you what Josh did. Kenan took the pawn and Josh ignored it. He said, you know what? You can have the pawn. I'm going to bring a piece out. And I thought that was pretty clever, but he ended up getting into a little bit of trouble. So he gives the pawn away, and Kenan just says, okay, I'm going to bring my knight into the game. And a cool idea by Josh. He offers him a second pawn, and Kenan gobbles that one up too, and he takes back with the knight this time. So his idea is I'm going to give you the pawn, but in return, I'm going to try to get ahead of you in development. And that normally works. The only problem here is Kennen had the move d5. And d5 gives black a big problem. After d5, when you hit that knight, it moves to the center. There's an opportunity for white to play tactically. And what that means is using tactics or tricks. Here, white has the really nice pawn e4. Now, look carefully, because it looks like a blunder or a mistake, but it's not. The pawn, this is the guy I'm talking about, the pawn is hitting the bishop. So you either move the bishop, giving me another free move, because don't forget, my guy is in the game now, or you take the pawn, because it looks like you're attacking this pawn twice, and it's only defended once. You see that? You have two attackers, the knight, the bishop, and white only has this knight protecting. The problem is, however you take it, let's say you take with the knight first, there's this nice little trap, queen a4 check. Oops. The queen hits the king and at the same time hits this square here. How does black get out of check? Well, you could move a knight backwards, but then you're going to lose this knight here. If you block the check with your bishop, then I can just swoop across with my queen and win a piece. It's really unpleasant. Let me show you one more idea. What if you block with the queen? Aha. Well, now black gets hit with bishop to b5, and that's really, really unpleasant. What to do? Your queen is pinned. So if you block with the knight, white's just going to take it, and black's position is going to fall apart. Okay? So that's something that could have happened in Kennen's game as well. Let me show you one more. Two more, actually. Sam and Mariella. So Sam is a new WCA student. Mariella is not. They got to this simple position called the four knights opening, where Sam just develops his knight, so does Mariella, and this is played at the Grandmaster level, so don't think this is some quiet opening. There's nothing wrong with developing this way. The only thing is, and I don't want to go into too much detail here, is if you're white and you're playing a four knights, you probably want to avoid putting the bishop on the normal square when you play the Italian game. The reason is you could get hit with something called the center fork trick, which I would say more than 2/3 of the WCA students know, but some of us still need to learn this. So try to make this a memory marker. What's the opening? The four knights. Don't put the bishop here. If you do, they could take the pawn. It looks like a blunder. White's going to win a piece, but black gets it back with the move d5. You see the fork in the middle? The pawn hits both the bishop and the knight. A lot of players retreat the bishop, and black just takes the other piece that you left there, and you take back. Now, look carefully. This is completely equal, except black gets to keep a pawn in the middle. That's what the center fork trick does. It knocks out white's center pawn. So be on the lookout for that trick in the future. Let me show you one more little snippet. This is Sophie and Daniel R. Sophie began with e4 and Daniel played d6. Okay, in the future at your level, anytime black gives you an opportunity to put two pawns, the d pawn and the e pawn side by side, I recommend you do it. Why? Because you get so much space, so many squares controlled by these little guys. One normal way for black to continue is knight f6, pressuring this pawn. Oops, we don't want to do that, sorry. And the best way to defend it is just play knight c3, and black's going to have to figure out a way to challenge this pawn center. They normally bring the bishop out this way. You can play knight f3, and you see what happens when you have pawns in the middle? It makes it easier for the pieces behind them to come out because they guard so many squares that you should have no trouble getting all your pieces out and castling. Well, let me show you what Sophie did. When Daniel played d6, she gave a check. And it may not be the best check in the world because Daniel just blocked it with a pawn, and he kind of pushed Sophie's bishop around. The good news is he definitely did chase that bishop. The only bad news is black doesn't have any power pieces out yet. But he quickly changes that with knight f6, and then Sophie played knight c3. Okay, here comes the end of the video. I'm not going to show you the whole game. Daniel played bishop to d7, and when you make a move like that with a bishop, try to keep in mind that the bishop really isn't doing anything new here that it was doing here. So when you put it there, it kind of gave Sophie a free move. She played knight f3, and here Daniel makes a mistake. And this is our third grade Daniel, by the way. We have a couple in the class. So Daniel puts his knight out here on h5, and that's a little bit risky because nothing is protecting it. So in the game, Sophie just put a second pawn in the center, which is actually very good, but she had a little trick here. Can you see it? Well, since nobody was protecting this knight, you could try to take advantage of that by moving this knight so that your queen would be attacking that square. So if you put it on g5, this knight is now being attacked. The problem is this bishop is also attacking this pawn up here. It's a double attack. You have the knight and the bishop attacking the pawn, and black has a knight here not protected. If you just randomly protect the pawn, oh boy, you could actually get checkmated. All right, my friends, I'm going to end it here. I hope you learned something. I'm going to ask a couple of questions in the blog. See if you're prepared to answer them for next week. Thanks, guys.